Countless individuals hold the belief that concerns will vanish only when every challenge they face has been resolved, when existence arranges itself perfectly, or when some flawless instant emerges where peace becomes possible. These people postpone action until finances improve, until circumstances stabilize, until understanding deepens, or until assistance arrives before permitting themselves any progress. Yet that perfect instant remains perpetually out of reach. Meanwhile, constant apprehension drains their vitality, disrupts their concentration, and removes the power essential for moving ahead. Carl Jung demonstrated that apprehension doesn't vanish when external circumstances get better. It fades when a person undergoes internal transformation. Concerns aren't settled in the outside world. They're addressed within the inner landscape, where thinking originates, where choices take form, and where psychological resilience develops. The reality remains that fretting over situations doesn't alter circumstances, doesn't settle financial obligations, doesn't resolve difficulties, and doesn't stop unfortunate events from occurring. It merely diminishes the capacity to confront them. Constant concern represents a pattern of thinking sustained by what remains unknown. The sole method to conquer this pattern involves substituting it with intentional behavior. Having every answer isn't necessary. Taking a single step is what matters, because each step diminishes tension, and every bit of action returns a feeling of personal control. Every movement shatters the pattern holding people captive. Apprehension thrives on remaining motionless and breaks apart through making choices. When behavior occurs even alongside fear, something internal starts gaining strength. Eliminating every concern before advancing isn't required. Advancing is what makes concern lose its influence. This reflects how human consciousness operates. During periods of stillness, people construct worst-case scenarios. During periods of movement, they start recognizing opportunities. The secret isn't postponing until feeling prepared. It's behaving even when preparation feels incomplete. Concern lessens as structure intensifies. Tension diminishes as understanding expands. Apprehension weakens when people demonstrate through lived experience that they possess more endurance than they realize. The majority spend countless years being concerned about events that never materialize. They construct pessimistic possibilities, develop internal narratives that only increase tension, and shoulder a psychological burden that doesn't truly belong to them. Constant concern acts as an invisible robber. It removes vitality, understanding, drive, and self-assurance, frequently without detection. Eventually, people awaken feeling depleted, not from their actions, but from their thoughts. This cognitive exhaustion serves as an unmistakable indication that authority must be retrieved, because persistent concern isn't a normal element of mature existence. It signals that something in the psychological realm requires fortification. Carl Jung witnessed numerous people grappling with constant apprehension. Individuals possessing capability, structure, and aspirations, yet imprisoned within pessimistic thinking patterns, preventing any advancement. He grasped that concern isn't predetermined. It's a mental pattern. A pattern breakable through repeated choices, aware behaviors, and a transformed approach to engaging with existence. Nobody carries an obligation to persist with tension. Nobody faces a predetermined path of silent struggle. An internal capability exists to stop the pattern that has kept existence motionless for extended periods. The initial understanding involves recognizing that concern differs from accountability. Accountability means taking action. Concern means remaining frozen. Concern generates the impression of cognitive activity, yet creates no actual transformation. It resembles remaining seated in a vehicle, with the motor operating, yet traveling nowhere. Power gets consumed, existence gets used up, yet no progress gets made. Once this gets recognized, it becomes apparent how many hours, days, and even years have been squandered on thinking that produced no genuine resolution. That awareness, though uncomfortable, becomes essential for transformation. The subsequent phase involves accepting that the majority of what creates fear already exists beyond personal influence. Nobody possesses the ability to influence what others believe, unpredictable occurrences, what has already happened, or choices already executed. Yet everyone possesses the ability to influence their reaction, their structure, their outlook, and their concentration. This proves sufficient for transforming existence. The most resilient individuals aren't those who influence everything external. They're those who govern their internal realm. Write inner power in the comments if you choose to master your mind. Concern loses influence when structure emerges. Tension decreases when understanding arrives. Consciousness settles when even a minor choice gets executed. Behavior represents the most effective remedy for concern. Regardless of current circumstances, something actionable always exists today. Even when it appears minor, tidying an area, taking a stroll, arranging financial matters, placing a challenging call, creating a checklist, or beginning a venture. Behavior generates movement, and movement generates power. When people start moving, they begin experiencing a feeling of internal authority. Once that feeling of authority returns, concern starts diminishing. Because concern represents an emotion that expands during inaction, yet dissolves the instant aware choices get made. From a Jungian viewpoint, Carl Jung would express that the psyche becomes stagnant when power remains unexpressed, and that movement, whether corporeal or psychological, returns equilibrium to the internal realm. Concern thrives on remaining frozen, yet it loses force when people elect to behave with awareness instead of staying imprisoned in thinking. Understanding something deeper also becomes critical. Concern doesn't cease by attempting to think less frequently. It ceases by developing the ability to think with enhanced clarity. Consciousness requires guidance. When people fail to direct it, it naturally drifts toward the bleakest possibilities. This reflects its instinctive inclination. This explains why Carl Jung stressed the significance of aware orientation. Consciousness must receive training, instruction regarding what deserves focus, what deserves remembering, and what deserves releasing. Concern signals that the psyche lacks direction, and each individual represents the director their consciousness awaits. People select whether they nourish their internal realm with apprehension or structure, disorder or arrangement, uncertainty or intention. What people repeatedly elect to cultivate is precisely what consciousness returns. Finally, they must acknowledge their fortitude. Not corporeal fortitude, yet the internal fortitude they've demonstrated repeatedly. They've experienced moments that seemed unbearable, yet they remain present. They've endured losses, letdowns, errors, periods of disorientation, and phases where they believed continuation was impossible. Yet they're still listening to this. That carries significant meaning. They possess the capability to advance even during their most difficult days. They must remember this. Their personal existence narrative demonstrates they're more resilient than any concern they carry presently. Liberating themselves from concern isn't a privilege. It's an act of honoring their existence, and it can commence immediately. Concern represents an automatic reaction, yet internal fortitude represents a conscious choice. Every individual, regardless of their history or situation, possesses the capacity to select how they think, how they behave, and how they confront the challenges existence presents before them. What numerous people fail to grasp is that concern quickly becomes a destructive pattern. The more people concentrate on what frightens them, the more immobilized they become. The more immobilized they feel, the more they fret. It's a descending spiral, draining power, self-regard, and any lucid vision of what lies ahead. Yet that pattern can be shattered, not through forceful effort, yet through clarity, not through recklessness, yet through deliberate purpose. Concern feeds on what remains unclear. This explains why, when people gain greater clarity regarding their choices, they start reclaiming their internal power. Concern also gets nourished by surroundings. When people immerse themselves in persistent grievance, pessimism, or chaos, the unconscious absorbs that emotional quality. The identical principle applies to the material they consume. When consciousness gets filled with stimuli generating tension, comparison, or uncertainty, concern unavoidably intensifies. Consciousness must receive protection with identical seriousness as the body. It's the most powerful internal instrument, and when it gets filled with disturbance, clarity becomes unattainable. Developing the ability to filter what gets permitted inside causes concern to lose its hold. Consciousness needs purifying space and quietness to restructure itself. That quietness emerges when people eliminate what removes their internal peace. This must be remembered. They're not fragile for experiencing concern. They're resilient individuals developing the ability to direct their consciousness deliberately. The distinction between those who advance and those who stay immobilized isn't the absence of concern, yet the capability to behave despite it. Bravery isn't the absence of apprehension, yet the choice to advance while apprehension exists. Structure isn't the absence of uncertainty, yet the dedication to do what's correct, even when uncertainty exists. This represents the essence of internal fortitude, not the elimination of emotion, yet the refusal to surrender to it. They possess considerably more power than they recognize. Concern has caused them to forget that power, yet it hasn't destroyed it. It merely needs remembering. They must reconnect with the version of themselves that was formerly concentrated, decisive, and resilient. That version never vanished. It's merely covered by layers of borrowed thinking, false narratives, and outdated apprehensions that no longer reflect their genuine worth. When you ultimately elect to move, when you claim ownership of your internal realm, when you pause, breathe intentionally, and execute a conscious choice to step ahead, something profound starts awakening inside you. That version of yourself you assumed was gone doesn't vanish permanently. It waits. Once it returns, your existence starts shifting in ways that your current consciousness cannot yet completely comprehend. There arrives a moment in every human existence when a profound realization emerges, frequently quietly, yet with undeniable force. Concern has never protected you. It has never genuinely prepared you. It has never made you more resilient. Write freedom in the comments if you are done with the past. It has only removed presence, drained power, and quietly claimed years that could have been experienced. Eventually, people look backward and recognize how much time they've spent rehearsing catastrophes that never materialized, exchanges that never occurred, futures that never came. Within that recognition, another reality surfaces. They cannot continue existing this way. They cannot afford to sacrifice their existence to thinking that produces no genuine transformation. They no longer wish to stay imprisoned in a future existing solely inside their consciousness. That realization can be painful because it reveals loss. Yet it's also sacred because it marks the beginning of authentic transformation. Concern isn't defeated in a single night. Yet it starts losing its hold the precise moment a firm internal choice gets made. No more. Those two words, spoken internally with clarity and determination, possess the capacity to reshape an entire existence. Carl Jung observed that numerous individuals carry psychological burdens so heavy that they struggle simply to breathe beneath their weight. People burdened by loss, by failure, by fractured relationships, by shattered confidence, by the gradual erosion of self-trust. Yet he also witnessed something remarkable. He saw these identical individuals rise not through external rescue, yet through an internal shift so powerful that even they were surprised by their strength. What transformed them wasn't a miracle. It wasn't fortune. It wasn't a sudden improvement in circumstances. It was a choice made deep within. A choice to cease allowing consciousness to act as an opponent. A choice to no longer be dominated by unconscious apprehensions. A choice to begin the gradual, demanding, yet transformative work of conscious construction. A choice to behave even while uncertainty still lingered in the background. They came to understand that concern only loses authority when you become more resilient than it. Advancing isn't primarily about acquiring something external. It's about becoming someone transformed internally. Someone who no longer drags unnecessary apprehensions into every moment. Someone who accepts that existence cannot be completely influenced, yet that their reaction to existence can be shaped, refined, and fortified. It's about becoming someone who recognizes that psychic power is precious, and that spending it on paralyzing thinking is a quiet form of self-betrayal. Someone who selects behavior over stagnation, advancement over paralysis, development over withdrawal, even while uncertainty still whispers. True greatness gets born at the precise moment you decide that concern will no longer be the author of your destiny. You must understand this clearly. The path ahead will not be flawless. There will be days when concern attempts to reclaim its position. Days when consciousness tries to drag you backward into familiar patterns. Days when you feel exhausted, exposed, and vulnerable. These days aren't proof of failure. They're evidence of development. Every authentic transformation provokes resistance. The psyche resists transformation because old patterns feel familiar even when they're harmful. Familiar suffering feels safer than unfamiliar liberation. Yet if you continue, if you persist, if you repeat aligned behaviors repeatedly, a moment will arrive when something shifts. You'll notice that concern no longer dominates you. Not because it vanished, yet because you've outgrown it. Once that moment arrives, existence begins feeling different. Choices become clearer. Thinking slows down. Confidence deepens. Fortitude becomes accessible, not because the world has softened, yet because you've hardened in the appropriate way. Concern transforms from a crushing weight into a signal that something requires adjustment, a signal that a choice must be executed, a signal that behavior is needed. Once you behave, the signal fades. You're no longer someone who freezes. You become someone who responds, who resolves, who advances. There's something else you must remember. Concern has also played a role in your development. It sharpened awareness. It revealed areas requiring attention. It exposed vulnerabilities requiring fortification. Don't despise it. Don't fight it endlessly. Acknowledge what it taught you, then release it. Its purpose has been fulfilled. You no longer need it as a guide. What you need presently is direction, behavior, and structured movement ahead. You need a plan. You need momentum. You need to step into motion. Concern was a teacher, yet its lessons are complete. Now it's time to graduate. You've survived difficult moments previously. You've confronted uncertainty and endured. You felt apprehension and continued regardless. This moment isn't different from those. It's simply another threshold. You've already proven that you can experience situations you once believed would break you. That alone confirms that something within you is greater than any concern you carry. Resilience lives there. Fortitude lives there. Determination lives there. Character lives there. You're not fragile. You're in the process of becoming more resilient, and that process is already working. The existence you desire is closer than your anxious consciousness suggests. You don't need to eradicate concern to reach it. You need to master it. You need to behave despite it. You need to advance alongside it until it no longer influences your steps. You need to decide here and presently that enough is enough, that your existence is too valuable to be consumed by apprehension, that you're finished existing inside thinking that keeps you small. Once that choice is executed, when you declare internally that today is the beginning, your consciousness begins to align with that intention. Your power shifts. Your perception sharpens. Your path adjusts. Everything begins the moment you begin. Concern dissolves in the presence of willpower. Today you're standing at the entrance of a new chapter. A chapter where you're no longer ruled by your thinking, yet where you lead your existence with awareness and fortitude. A chapter where you cease being concerned and finally genuinely begin to advance. Write "new chapter" in the comments to start moving forward today.